So here I am, and it's a tremendous honor to be the first speaker for the Hudson River Forum in this wonderful room, I believe. Thank you for coming. The Lyceum tradition, to me, is among the very finest legacies of the United States to the world. And this part of the United States was foremost. They were leaders in arguing about everything and discussing everything intensely. This was the flowering of democracy, I believe, and it was gradually put to death by the rise of experts who crowded out the voice of people who actually worked for a living. And Branson never attended college, and he dropped out of high school to launch business ventures. When asked by an interviewer from New Yorker magazine last year for the secret of his outrageous list of successes, Branson told the interviewer he could trace his transformation to the age of 4, when Mother Eve drove him miles from their London home and told him to get out of the car and make his own way back somehow. And off she went, 4 years old. I think it took him 9 hours. He did, and after that, he said, nothing ever daunted him again. And his perceptions, reflection, resourcefulness, and boldness became from that moment exceptionally acute. He was 4 years old and already well on his way to becoming educated. You know, Jefferson was in charge of a 2,500-acre plantation with thousands of employees at the age of 12. His parents being both dead, it was up to Tom to do the books, keep the workers working, and market the stuff. At the age of 12, the first admiral in the American Navy, David Farragut, was put in charge of a warship off the coast of Peru and told to sail it back to Boston. It was a captured British prize, and the ethics of the day were that a gentleman let the enemy officers keep their weapons. So below decks was the entire hostile enemy crew armed. And when the captain of the ship that had been taken by the Americans came on deck with both his pistols cocked and said he would be damned if a stripling was going to sail his ship, Farragut is recorded as saying, "Sir, you have 1 minute to get below deck, or I will have you hung and the carcass thrown over the side." There. We have participated, all of us, in some kind of an obscene extension of childhood that seemingly never ends if you live in Manhattan, because it extends into the 40s and the 50s. People are still dating on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, looking at guests for Mr. Right or Miss Right. No wonder Branson dropped out of school and never went to college. What exactly, I mean precisely, would institutional training have had to teach him? I don't mean you can't learn from other people. I mean the bell-driven, subject-driven, test-driven regimen that was created in northern Germany in the military state of Prussia has nothing to teach most of us except habit training and attitude training. That's what's being tested. Surely no one in this audience ever hired anybody and asked them what their grade point average was or what their SAT scores were. You didn't ask your husband or your wife. When your home was built, you didn't ask the builder. When you get your hair cut, you don't ask the barber. Because on some level, all of you understand the information is worthless. It tells you one thing, that people will memorize what you tell them to memorize. Since I'm going to be operating in the dangerous territory of suggesting to you that the paradoxes of schooling, which cause it to operate in an anti-educational fashion, are not accidents at all, but are the outcome of deliberate policy decisions embedded in its structure, I want you to hear some prominent voices from the past, which I think fairly represent the thinking of policymakers who've spoken for the policy classes about school in various times and places. If you're patient, these will add up to a single voice advising you that everything you think you know about school should be subject to question. Let me start in Asia several thousand years ago, in China, with the imperial policy known as, quote, the policy of keeping people dumb. Your homework is to reflect for yourself why top management would hold such an adversarial outlook on its own citizenry. As an aid to your reflection, you might want to consider whether you were or are completely forthcoming with your own children. Do they know, for example, how much you earn, or how many liquid assets you have, or what your occupational prospects are, or the true condition of your health, or why your sister hasn't spoken to you for 20 years? I'm drawing a parallel there with information that most people keep from their children. And yet the policy classes from ancient China right to now maintain that there's information you should not be allowed to have for your own good. It would just upset you. In Europe, a few hundred years later, the great Roman historian Polybius said this about the relationship of management and the managed. This is a direct quote from Polybius. The masses can only be controlled by mysterious terrors. Suppose this management technique were thoroughly exposed in childhood. I don't mean denounce that it was exposed in childhood. Suppose that from elementary school to high school, the young were set to discuss and investigate this policy of control by terror. Suppose it was common knowledge that the most influential policy philosopher in modern history, George Hegel, at the University of Berlin, had